Hi, this is Harold Daub, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists. And we're here with Courtney Colley. Courtney is the CWD Communication Specialist for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And we have a couple of questions that we wanted to ask Courtney that I'm hearing from the membership of PFSC. I'm also picking them up off of social media and just in general in discussions with Pennsylvania sportsmen in general. So when CWD is discussed, you hear this term prion or prion being referenced. What is that? Can you explain that?
Yeah, to put it in simpler terms, prion is just a protein. These prions are actually found in most mammals. They are proteins that sit on the surface of cells. And that then leads to the question, well, if most mammals, including myself, have prions naturally in our body, why am I not sick? So whenever these prions are naturally in your body, we don't know the exact function of them yet. We believe they may deal with cell-to-cell communication, but we really just don't know. We assume they do good things for your body. However, when these prions misfold, it can result in disease. And more specifically, these prions can accumulate in the central nervous system, and they cause tiny holes to form in the brain that results or eventually leads to death.
So CWD has not shown up in humans yet, as far as we know. Is that correct?
Yeah, chronic wasting disease was first detected in 1967, and since there have been no known cases of chronic wasting disease infecting humans.
Okay. So why the concern at this point?
So, like I said, there has been no known cases of chronic wasting infecting humans, and if you asked me if chronic wasting disease is a threat to humans, the honest answer is probably not, but we really don't know.
Okay.
So more research needs to be done to completely understand the extent of which chronic wasting disease or the potential for chronic wasting disease to infect humans. So chronic wasting disease is closely related to mad cow disease, which we do know can infect humans through the consumption of meat from an infected animal. And
that's a prion disease as well?
And it is a prion disease,
okay.
Yes. So just kind of that type of relationship to a disease that we do know can infect humans, it kind of causes some concern there, and rather be safe than sorry.
Okay. So if I'm a successful hunter, especially in the disease management areas that are unfortunately throughout Pennsylvania today, what are the recommendations from the PGC relative to the handling of that deer, the consumption of that deer that are harvested in those disease management areas?
So first, the Pennsylvania Game Commission would recommend that anybody who harvests deer in a CWD positive area, so Pennsylvania's disease management areas, get your deer tested before consuming the meat from that animal. If your deer comes back and it is not detected for chronic wasting disease, we would still recommend, we recommend this anyway, deer carry lots of different diseases, not just CWD. We would always recommend that you wear gloves when processing deer and thoroughly wash your hands afterwards. Try to avoid cutting through the spinal cord as much as possible. So if you want to get your deer tested, you do have to remove the head. So you're going to have to cut through the spinal cord at some point in time. But there are a lot of people who tend to cut directly down the spinal cord to process their deer. Try avoid doing this.
Yeah.
Just because you don't want that spinal fluid.
Yeah. I can remember as a kid, we'd always cut the deer completely in half.
Yep.
You know, and we'd want to have the spine cut right in half. So that's not recommended to be done.
Yeah, we would definitely
longer.
not recommend it because the spinal cord and the brain are really where these prions are concentrating the heaviest. So we want to try and avoid that. And after you're done processing, there has actually been a recent study that came out. We now suggest that you put your tools or equipment, if you can, to soak them in a 40% dilution of household bleach for at least 5 minutes. This will help deactivate the prions that may still be on the surface of those tools or equipment.
40%.
Yep, 40% dilution for 5 minutes.
Okay. So I've killed a deer in a disease management area. We want the hunters to have them tested, not only for their own knowledge, but how is that information used then in the scientific community that's studying this disease?
So first, to be successfully at managing any disease, you first need to know where is it and how bad is it. So that's exactly what this is. So by submitting your head for testing in a head collection bin provided by the Game Commission, you are allowing us to not only monitor the infection rate of the disease in the local area, but also the spatial distribution. So we're going to know where is it and how bad is it in this area. And that helps us make future management decisions in relation to chronic wasting disease. Okay. So you're helping us monitor the spread of this disease, and you're helping us know exactly what are we dealing with in each area.
And that's head collection for both antlerless and antlered deer. Should the antlers remain on the deer's head when it's put in the bin?
You can leave the antlers on there. However, it should be noted that you're not going to get them back. Okay. So if you would like your antlers, you need to remove them before placing the head in the head collection bin. Okay. And you can do that by capping the skull and just remove as much of the brain material as possible from the underside of that skull plate. Okay. We realize you're in the field and you don't have bleach and all of these materials. You can't boil it to get it perfect. Mm-hmm. All right, just scrape as much of the brain material as possible off of the underside of that skull plate.
And then a successful hunter can transport that skull plate outside of the disease management areas.
Yes, yes. So if you're processing your deer, once all of the high-risk parts are removed, which is basically the head, but more specifically in the head, we're talking about the brain, the tonsils, lymph nodes, and the eyes in the head, the spinal cord, and the spleen. Once those parts are removed, you can take any other part of that animal outside of the disease management area. Okay. So again, you got to make sure the brain material and spinal cord material isn't present. So if you want to take a clean cape, that's fine, as long as no brain material, spinal cord is present. Okay. And same thing with the skull cap with antlers.
All right.
As long as you get those parts off, you'll be fine.
All right. Thank you, Courtney. So if a hunter deer comes back and it tests positive, mm-hmm. and he or she has the meat collected, but they've not consumed it yet, the deer is tested and is found to be positive. What should a hunter do with the meat from a positive deer? How should they dispose of that meat?
So first, if your deer does test positive for chronic wasting disease, you're going to hear from your local game warden either directly through the phone, or they may even stop by and knock on your door because they want you to know that information as soon as possible. We do realize that our hunters are patiently waiting for their results. Mm-hmm. So we want you to have that information as soon as we can get it to you. If your deer does test positive for CWD, it is actually up to you, the hunter, as to whether you want to keep that meat and consume it or whether you want to dispose of it. If you want to dispose of it, you can do so by double bagging the meat and putting it in with your commercial trash service as long as it goes to a lined landfill. If that's not possible for any reason, also our local game wardens would be more than willing to help you properly dispose of that, to work with you to make sure it gets properly disposed of. Okay. Whether that just means they take it for you to a lined landfill or whatever needs to be done there. Okay. So you can put it in, you can double bag those high-risk parts and put them in with your commercial trash.
But under no circumstance should we take that venison and dump it
No, please don't do that.
Because then we could potentially be spreading those prions out into the environment where it has not been detected yet.
Yes, so you could definitely be spreading it into creating a new area for chronic wasting disease. Okay. Not only could you be increasing the risk of spreading it directly to another animal, exposing another animal to that disease, another deer to that disease, but also those prions could definitely end up being in the landscape then, which studies show that once those prions get in the soil, they can remain infectious for several years. So we want to prevent CWD from getting in the soil at all costs.
Okay.